All right, so today you can see on our slide that we're going to start with just a little tiny bit of review and talking about stuff that you may recall from back in middle school with Mrs. Williams. Seems interesting because we're having some people remember and have some experience with Notan, and then other people seem like maybe they didn't work on that with her. So we'll just talk about that for a minute. And then I'm going to go through the classwork and the artworks choices for the week, and then give you lots of time to ask questions. And I think I have time, probably I did last period, for the a little demo in crosshatching as well. So first, for the benefit of anyone who wasn't here yesterday, and also just a quick review, I wanted to start by opening up and just reminding everybody what we talked about yesterday in regards to value and how that can be measured and looked at in artwork. In particular, we looked at Starry Night, and then in this class, I called up this Ansel Adams photograph. And remember, Ansel Adams was that photographer who went out into the wilderness of America. And I showed this particular photograph, and I talked a lot about this graph that you can open under the clipped adjustments, which is in Photoshop. It's something that you want to get used to and comfortable using when you open up an artwork or a photograph in your Photoshop for iPad. Um, Values are how light or dark something is in an artwork. We refer to that. And a good artwork is going to have a full range of value, okay? So we want all those values stretching from very dark to very light. And what we see here, I can put my finger on it and you can see that blue glowing circle right there, see? We see that Ansel Adams photograph here has values that are very bright, stretching all the way to values that are very dark. And that's a super good range. And he was really excellent at that. I think I have both of the things open here. Maybe not. Let me look. Yes, I do. So if I turn off his stuff and I look at Starry Night, one of the things, trying to get that to pop out, where is it? There it is, that we noticed yesterday. And I noticed this mostly because when I was searching for Starry Night on the internet, remember I noticed that there were a lot of different versions that were for sale. And I figured out, I guess, that the companies that were selling them, they were adjusting them and tweaking them to make them look better in certain ways, like adjusting the contrast and the brightness. So when we look at this particular levels adjustment, we can see that it's been brightened probably in circumstances to make it more appealing, because Van Gogh doesn't quite hit the brightest of the brights when we're looking at the value range. So I'm not gonna criticize Van Gogh for that. I think that especially the contrast of those lights against the darks and other grays, if it was in black and white, stand out a lot. But just objectively speaking, he doesn't have that same range that uh, Ansel Adams does. So that's something that we talked about yesterday, was reading the values in an artwork using that levels feature in Photoshop, which was pretty handy, I might say. Okay, did anybody have any questions on that or how to access that in Photoshop? Because that's something that you not only might have to use, but could use to your benefit in other situations. All right, let's take a look at this. Now, this right here, these little pictures that I put onto today's slide, these are all different examples of the idea or the concept of Notan, Notan. Is anybody calling up some memories or has heard of that word before, Notan, or remembers the project? Probably it looked like the one on the bottom. Just a thumbs up even. I know Mary Carol and Kaden, you're quite a bit older. I'm not sure. It seems like mostly, well, actually I had a junior that remembered Notan. Do you guys remember that at all? Did you make one of those?
Um, I'm not sure. I don't think we did.
Okay, so I've been getting sort of varied results when I've asked earlier today. So Notan itself is a principle, a Japanese idea or design principle that has to do with balance and harmony of the darks and lights in an image, the values. So in its simplest, most pure form, it's really represented by that yin and yang symbol, the perfect balance of black and white or dark and light value. So it's just perfect harmony within an image of the darks and the lights. Okay. So one important distinction is that it doesn't have to be equal. So even looking at these examples right here, you can see that the darks and the lights don't have to be equal. Balance does not always mean equal. Okay, just like maybe you've heard that idea that fairness does not always mean equality. Okay, like equalness. So is what I meant to say. When you're looking at these artworks, what we can take from Notan, the design principle, is that we want to balance the darks and lights, the extreme darks and lights within our image. So like if you look at the top two images on the left, artists use this design principle when they are planning out an artwork. Okay, so like they might be looking at planning out or sketching out an artwork that has animals in it. So they're looking at their subject. Maybe they're deciding on the POV or the composition or what the background's going to be, and they're just looking at the subject or planning the artwork and saying, okay, here's where my darkest darks are going to be, and my lightest lights are going to be, and how can I frame that within the artwork? Okay, so that might be the first step of an artwork. Or the one on the right there, which is a landscape. This happens, sometimes this one looks pretty developed, but a lot of times landscape painters, especially ones that paint on location or from observation, will take a black marker or a real quick paint, dark paint especially, and they'll just be like, and they'll paint the dark areas and leave the light areas, just those two values to represent where the forms are going to be. So that one, like I said, looks a lot more developed. That does not look like a quick like recording of the information. But that if you searched Notan landscape in Google, you would see a bunch of those like right away. This one looks a lot more developed. And then on the bottom there, that is an actual like art form. Notan has a couple different uses, but that's a Japanese art form right there where you'd start with a square, a black square, and you cut sections out and you reflect and rotate the shapes out of it to create that positive and negative. So it's always going to be like, well, usually always symmetrical and kind of reflected in that positive negative balance created on that principle of balancing and harmonizing your darks and lights. So it's really ties in nicely with all the stuff that we're doing right now, focusing on value and balancing it throughout your artwork. So like if you think about yesterday, here's my photos. That's the wrong photo. Yesterday when I was doing that example with Starry Night, and I was showing you, this one's a little more intricate, but remember when I was showing you just the simple, where was the darkest dark, where was the lightest light, and they were lining up at the focal points and they were clustered together, remember, because he was very deliberately doing that. That's exactly the kind of thing that Notans are getting us to focus on. Does anybody have any questions about that basic principle of that harmony between the darks and the lights in balance? As you start to work on the projects for this week or the artwork for next Monday, you're going to want to be thinking about that stuff as you make your composition and create your own artwork. All right, so going forward, what I would like to do now, I was just a little kind of oh, actually I wanted to show you something on here. So if you miss a class or if you need a little more information or clarification, don't forget, this is yesterday's slide on the website. I wanted to remind you that I've been posting the lesson or parts of it. Sometimes I don't need to post the whole day. A recording of the lesson right there. So you can see I have that value song that I showed you, but I also right below that have the lesson recorded right there amongst all the other goodies. Okay, so here's the choice board for this week. Yesterday, we started talking about value scales and how important they are. Today, I have that and another option for your classwork. Your classwork is due today, but it's not due before class. So like I got a really good question before class, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that even if you start your work before Tuesday's class, which is totally fine, like great job, it's your work isn't due before class time on Tuesday because I hadn't even really talked about it yet. So if you got a jump start on it, that's awesome, but it's not due before class. So let's take a look. Remember, you can touch on any of those numbers and it takes you to the full slideshow with directions. So here is your first option for the classwork this week, creating value scales. And you're going to be creating two separate value scales, okay? Not just one, two. They need to be different materials or different techniques. So your value scale obviously is going to go from pure white to pure black with 4 to 6 steps between. And then I give you some suggestions here for what you're using, pencil or ebony, drawing pen, Sharpie, or you could try doing it in an app. And you can try that. It's totally fine. So for techniques, we're talking about that blended shading, which is smooth with no segments or steps. Or if you want to use a different material, such as like a pen or, well, you can do this with pencil too, cross hatching or hatching, stippling, and then of course different things in your app. You could do those things, or you could change the size or shape of the brush. So those two scales need to be different. You could use pencil for both of them, but then you need to use a different technique. Or you could do cross hatching for both of them, but you need to use a different tool. Okay. Uh, Moving on in the slideshow, you saw some of this yesterday. So some of it is just like materials and pictures to help you. But then when you get to this slide, this is new again. It has a video that shows you how to set up a value scale, because I think I threw out my example. Do you remember yesterday I showed you a value scale that was like about this long that I scribbled onto paper in like the 30 seconds that I had to kill before or while my iPad was rebooting in my first period class yesterday? That's not what you're doing. Okay, that was like literally just a waste time while my iPad was rebooting. You need to set up a real value scale. Like I've shown a bunch of examples in this and in class yesterday, and none of them were a 10-second scribble. Okay, so please make sure that you're setting up your own value scale using a grid or measuring or whatever, or which this video shows how to set up value scales and how to use them. Or I have I'm supplying a bunch in this slideshow. So you can use any of these to download. You could print them if you wanted. You could copy them. I mean, there's a number of ways you can utilize these. You don't have to. You can create your own value scale, but what I don't want to see is just like a 10-second scribble. Okay, I'll probably just contact you and ask you to do it again if it's a 10-second scribble. Okay, so don't forget that each classwork has two components. It has the production component, whether it's a value scale or critique or whatever, and then it has just a few simple questions that are reflection. Okay, so like this one says, what did you learn that was most valuable from this? What was most challenging or confusing? And then it's asking you to please define value. Okay, so those are all going to get submitted within this PDF. All right, let me show these because it gets confusing. All right, so that was the first option. Does anybody have any questions real quick about the value scale? The value scale classwork? Okay, so number two option, download and analyze the 3 artworks into black, whites, and grays. So this is pretty much exactly what we did together yesterday in class on Starry Night. I've given you 3 artworks that are different from each other in style and whatever. And I've given you the titles, the exact titles and the artists. So I want you to look these up in Google, save them, open them up in Fresco or Photoshop, and then do sort of, what we did yesterday. Very specifically and carefully, take your time, do a nice job. I think yesterday I used my finger and I was moving real quick. Remember that when I'm working in class, sometimes I'm doing kind of a hack job to keep things moving. So you do your best to do a good job identifying the pure white, the pure black, or as close to it, the brightest, the darkest in these artworks, painting right over the photos on a new layer, okay? The Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali, that's on the left with the melting clocks. The Great Wave off Kanagawa, which is by Hokusai. He was a printmaker from Japan, and that's a very famous artwork. And then this is a photograph by another super awesome American photographer named Annie Leibovitz. She's taken some of the most spectacular portraits of uh, rock and roll musicians and actors and actresses and celebrities and stuff in America. She worked for Rolling Stone and Vanity Fair, and well, she still does. She's awesome. So you're going to bring those in to your app and create a gray layer and then work on top. In this video that I've inserted, I walk you through that whole process getting started. In case you have questions on how to set it up, you should definitely look at that. And then, of course, here are those 3-ish simple questions, and then you can attach it. And I want to see the screenshots and your artwork, so you can do those together or separate. So it's either 3 or 6 files. Okay, questions on the classwork, which is the first column, which is due today. And I want you to try to keep up, with the pace of things so you don't fall too far behind, so that you can then move into your artworks, which these are setting you up for with the skills. Okay, so let's pause a second. Who has questions on the classwork part of things? Okay, I'm going forward. All right, so the 3 artworks choices this week, because we're going to spend a couple weeks focusing on value. So the first 3 are really still pretty basic, I'm going to say. The first one, I know you've done something similar. You did a little still life with Mr. Rice, but this one's a little bit more, we're going to say more intricate. You're going to focus on just one small subject, but you're going to try to draw and shade it as realistically as you can. So when I open up this slideshow, I have a picture I didn't insert here yet. That's why it looks so blank. First, create a light drawing of your small subject. You want to make sure that it's on a control and plain background because we don't really want anything to do with that. It has to have some details. Don't have it be just like a plain, I don't know why I keep thinking of like a baseball, but there are worse things that you could do for that, for this, like a roll of masking tape, something that has no detail and almost no change of value. You want something that has something to it that you can draw, something that you find interesting, okay, that has at least 5 values. So I give you a bunch of suggestions there, but really anything small that you can really engage yourself in. In just about every slideshow here in this entire week, and all the slides and all the links out, I have how to convert your color photo into black and white. So if you forget that because it's not habit yet, don't panic. It's just about everywhere, including here. So you want to take your color photo first, then convert it to black and white, and you're going to be using that as your main like a source image and things to help you once you're ready to start drawing. Okay, so starting with a very light contour drawing, simple outline and shapes, then really look closely and focus on shading with detail. It's up to you what shading technique you use. I think a lot of people are going to be comfortable using blended, but you're not limited to that. At the end, once I go through all the choices, I'm going to show you a drawing that I've been working on for quite a while that's cross-hatching. So I'm going to show you that as an option of a small object study with cross-hatching. Okay, so when you're done, that's what it's going to look, what it should be looking like. And I have a slideshow right there that goes through all the different techniques that you could try. Okay, the second option is to create an original artwork in Photoshop that balances black, white, and gray values. So this one I think is going to be popular. I've done this a long time in the past. It's always been popular. So this one's called black, white, over, under. You're going to start by taking a really nice color photograph that has a good range of value. So a good way to check would be to take a good photograph that you like, a good photograph that you took or have permission for, and then check it out in Photoshop with that levels adjustment layer and see if it has that good curve, all the way from one end to the other. And then you're going to be converting it to black and white and then revealing color or adding color. That seems complicated perhaps when you glance at this slide, but it's really not. Okay, and the way that I describe it, if you're not looking at your screen, look right now, because visually this is the best way to describe it. So try to imagine that it's like the layers are stacking up in front of you like a cross section, right? You've got your color layer on the bottom. So imagine if it was, actually I think it's easier to picture with this ocean scene. So if you've got your ocean color picture on the bottom, then you make a copy of that and you make it black and white. So here's the black and white one, all right? Then you're gonna be using masks. You put a mask right here with that black and white picture. And when you're working on a mask, whenever you paint black or use a gradient with a paintbrush or a gradient, it like erases through that black and white picture and it shows the color underneath. So when we're looking at this fish, ocean water fish picture, the color was this beautiful stuff on the left that was underneath. And then the black and white's on top, and wherever you erase through, it reveals the color underneath. So it's kind of seems like a lot of words, but when you stop and look at this, it's really not. It's like open the photo, make a copy, change that copy to black and white, paint on the parts that you want to show color with the black on the mask, and it'll show through. It's really pretty fun. It's like coloring. And then it says at the bottom there, you can add new clear layers on top, and that will allow you to paint new colors. So let me show you what that looks like. And there's that video again, like this, okay? So parts of the image are coming through in real color, but then also you can do things like paint purple and blue leaves and pink and orange, and it's really fun. Okay, so that's a really nice one. And it's all about that balance, that harmony of dark and lights, black, grays, and then this one adds in that nice fun color aspect. Okay, the last option is I'm really excited about because it's a new one that I can't wait to see what people come up with. So this one is creating a value scale photograph. Create a tonal value scale by arranging or observing, excuse me, subjects from light to dark and photographing them. So here you're going to take a color photo and be very aware, first of all, of your background. So you may have to arrange them. You may find something that's like too big for you to arrange, something naturally occurring like trees or something like that. But you're finding something that's an arrangement from light to dark, or you're doing that yourself. Take a few different photos, kind of changing your POV and stuff like that. And then you're going to be changing your image to black and white. Okay. Making adjustments as you need it. And remember, we talked yesterday, the technique about checking your value, I didn't mention this yet today, is to squint at it. So the finished image is going to be black and white. This, I included this site, this awesome artist. I think she was in Texas, if I remember correctly, or California. I can't remember now. She has all these collections in, groups. I forget what she calls them. A lot of them are in, I think actually all of them are in color, but I picked ones that were not as much about color and more about value to show you, because I think they're really inspiring and fun. Um, Notice that hers are as much about the composition as about the value transitions. So they're just really cool. Don't just take stuff and throw it down, okay? Definitely arrange it. Think about how it's arranged. I put some ideas for how, some ideas about what you might collect and arrange. Here are two videos, the black and white one, and also basic editing suggestions and directions. And then here's an example that I just did yesterday. So I have these vases over here in my room, and they are a variety of values. So when I was like kind of glancing around, I'm like, oh, those will be perfect. And they've got lots of good shapes and stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take a picture of those. So this first picture I took was just eye level, boring, straight on, stuff in the background, hanging on the wall, unrelated, not interesting. Also, not arranged from light to dark. So that's what you don't do, okay? So the one on the right, I purposely put them in an arrangement from light to dark. And then I also took the photograph on the diagonal to give it a lot, it just made it a lot more interesting to have it kind of going away. I put that nice big white one right on the corner. So I'm using like some perspective to give it some movement. And here's my finished piece. So I didn't zoom in. I just cropped all the other stuff out. I cropped it out so that it wasn't distracting. Honestly, the flowers were not doing anything. My focus should have been and was on the vases themselves. And by changing it to a pretty high contrast black and white, it really punched up those values. So you can see here that I've got exactly what I wanted, a nice arrangement from very light to very dark, just with the subjects. I love this. That was so much fun. And I really didn't do much to it except for choose. I used my iPhone photos editing. I didn't even use Photoshop for this. So when you use your iPhone filters in the camera or in the Photos app, it has 3 different black and white filters. So I think I used the last one, which I don't remember what it's called right now off the top of my head, but it has the highest contrast and it worked perfect for this. Okay, I think that's the last slide. All right, so let me shut all these windows because I can't even find the website now. Here it is. Okay, so those are the 3 options for the artwork. So when you're looking at the classwork, you can maybe think ahead to which one of these would suit what you're interested in doing for the rest of the week. If you're not sure yet, then just do whatever one appeals to you most. Does anybody have a question right now before I move into the demo on crosshatching that I can answer before I do that? Okay, so let me, I gotta turn off this screen share. Okay, let me turn this so I can make sure I don't screw it up. Now, screen share over here. Okay, so goodness. Okay, so this is what I want to show you over here. You guys can see my drawing setup. What I wanted to show was first the picture that I took of when I'm drawing at home. So I have this like thing that it's actually, I think it's like a soda crate or a milk crate. And I put stuff in it that I wanted to draw. And I took a picture with the lighting that I wanted for my window. And then So then I took a picture because I have a pretty young cat and it causes a lot of trouble. So I couldn't leave this stuff down where I like to draw next to my window. And also I don't have time to draw during the day, obviously. So this was like over, I don't know when this was. This was quite a while ago. So I took a picture so that I could draw like in the evening and stuff when I'm not busy. And I converted it. Well, first I drew in pencil, and then I started to work with my drawing pens. And I got to a certain point, and then I was like, well, I have just a line drawing and I want to shade now. So what am I going to do? And usually I'm a pencil drawer and shader. So I wanted to try something different. I decided to crosshatch. And I knew I needed to really spend a lot of time working in detailed lines. So I took my picture and I converted it to black and white, just like I'm asking you guys to do. And I started to go in, I'm trying to zoom in here, but maybe that's as far as I can zoom in. I started to zoom in and work in one little section at a time. So if I get this under here, you can see, I wanted to show you this part right here with the shell and the unicorn. That's like a finger puppet unicorn that someone got me. Like it's made out of yarn. So you can see in this area, I think, first of all, these are the pens that I use. They're Pigma Micron, okay, Sakura. So they're ink that doesn't bleed or run, and they're really, really tiny, okay? I don't know if you can see that. There you go. So first I came in and I was shading and cross-hatching. I'm not like shading like coloring. Everything is just a line. There's no area where I just like laid down my pen and was like coloring and shading like this. Everything is just individual lines, which has been quite a bit of work, and I have to go real slow and careful because sometimes there is a temptation just to start shading like if I had a pencil. So I just found that when I first started, you can see this part over here, I started to shade and then I got a little worried because stuff was so dark and I was like, oh, that's not going to be good. But I reminded myself, like, if you can see this part right here, this is a pretty bright white, the way that this is reflecting off that little patch right there. And then compared to that, this is green fabric. I know that because I own it, right? You're getting a little reflection, but if I change it like that, oops, sorry. That's in real life. Come on, hold on. In real life, I know this is green fabric. So I can't leave this paper clear, you know, like I can't leave it the white of the paper. I need to add some value there. So I just kept approaching every little section that way. Well, I know that this white teacup, only the brightest parts can be white. So I kept going in and saying, if this handle is the white of the paper, then everything else has to go up from there, has to have value. So if that's the brightest white, then this is the darkest dark, and this is the darkest dark right there. You see what I mean? So I would go back and forth and look at it and say, okay, I got to get this to be the darkest dark. And then this is the next part down. So you can refer to each area and using your value scale, you can go, okay, well then if I have a 10-point value scale and this is a 10 where it's black, then this is a 9, then this is an 8, and you keep looking at your image and your drawing and you go back and forth until you get that illusion of depth by comparing what you've achieved and what's in front of you and what you're getting through your markers or your pencil or your paint or whatever it is. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? I mean, it might make sense in idea, then you just have to practice. Because remember, I'm old and I've tried these things for a long time. And when you get out of practice, sometimes you just have to practice more and more. And like I said, I haven't drawn that way in a long time. There are some parts where I screwed up and put down too much ink, and guess what? You can't take it back. So then I was like, oh, okay, well, that was too much. Learned my lesson there. You know, you can't do anything about it except learn or try something else or, you know, whatever. But that's okay. Okay, I'm trying to turn this off. Sorry. Okay, so let me go to Schoology. And we can wrap this up for today. Does anybody have any questions?